My name's Steve and I love people who make things. We're a nation of inventive, inspiring makers.
This room alone will produce 100,000 items a year. But yeah, it used to be full of cows.
I'm on a mission to list the greatest products we make, because if we don't champion the skills on our doorstep, we risk losing them.
One of the biggest challenges we have here is our ageing workforce.
Join me as we hear stories from behind the factory doors.
My poor son, he jokes about it now. You used to make me sleep in a suitcase.
We never argue. Sure, we have a bit of a... Yeah, we have tense moments.
Together, let's make more makers. Welcome to the factory next door and welcome to Kew. I am on my way to the world famous Kew Gardens. I've actually taken the bus here because it's actually not too far from my house, though it's raining a lot and the walk to the gardens might be a bit soggy. Do you know what? It's raining so heavily I'm going to hide under this train pedestrian underpass. Oh my word, where was I? So yes, I am heading off to meet someone who creates something that sits at the very intersection of science and art. We've been making them for centuries. I personally continue to find them inspiring. They can sit in textbooks just as easily as they can sit framed on your bathroom wall. It is the Botanical Illustration. Well, I run from this railway underpass to the Kew Gardens reception. Have a listen to what's coming up in this week's show.
I remember drawing my dad's house and he said, "Why don't you count the bricks?"
Oh, he wanted you to be quiet, didn't he?
Yeah. So we do spend a lot of time staring down the microscope, drawing, but you get really lost in it.
What has drawn you to Botanical Illustration?
I found it very difficult to pick between art and science when I went to uni.
Plants are part of everybody's everyday life. They're the one part of nature that is always within view, even if you're living in a city.
Now, without being rude.
I know what you're going to say. I know exactly what you're going to say. Hi, I'm Lucy Smith and I'm a botanical artist and illustrator.
So we're on the Kew Gardens campus. We are in the herbarium building. I'm just making sure I've pronounced that correctly. And I've come into Lucy's studio and it's just bare walls everywhere. I expected loads of kind of art on the walls. Is that a deliberate, conscious decision?
No, the fact is that here we're doing more scientific art and illustration. My room at home, on the other hand, is covered with postcards and sketches and all sorts of artwork. It's a lot more cramped as well. So this looks a bit more like a lab than an art studio at times, doesn't it?
It really does. And actually, we're getting straight into the deep conversation here, which is a question I wanted to ask about. Earlier, I described Botanical Illustration as kind of sitting at the intersection between science and art. Is that fair, or do you view yourself more as a scientist or more as an artist?
I think you've got it right. It's definitely in the middle. And it's funny how a lot of the artists here, about half were trained in science and about half were trained in art. And I'm one of those who was trained in art. But when I was doing an art degree, and I've drawn since I was a child, I've loved drawing and I've loved nature. So it took me a few years, but when I discovered there was this thing called natural history illustration and specifically botanical illustration, I thought, oh gosh, this is perfect. It just suited me down to the earth.
Can I ask you just to describe a little and take me round your lab? Because it really does look like a scientific lab.
I like that. It's an art lab, isn't it? It's a dedicated room. It's called the artist's room, so it does what it says on the tin. And it's north facing. It's got one wall is completely made up of windows. And as you can hear, it's under the flight path.
I've heard a lot of planes.
Yeah. And there are several desks. We've all got piles of things on our desk. So we've got piles of specimens, most importantly, plant specimens. Sometimes they're in the iconic herbarium green boxes, which is what we store the specimens in to protect them from pests. So there are over 7 million of these specimens around. To really understand something, there's no better way to understand it than to draw it. Because drawing makes you make definite decisions about the shape and structure and appearance of something. You can't draw 5 lines, you've got to decide on 1 line. You can't say, well, I think that stamen is attached to that flower there. You've got to say, no, it's definitely attached. And you do that by drawing a line.
The precision must drive you crazy at times, though, surely.
The precision does drive me crazy, but I love it, and that's why I do this. I've always loved detail and precision. I remember drawing my dad's house in Sydney when I was a teenager, and I was sitting there, and he said, why don't you count the bricks? Why don't you count the rows of bricks and count the number of bricks across?
Oh, he wanted you to be quiet, didn't he?
Yeah. No, he thought I was crazy. He was an artist, actually, and did really loose work. And when I was a kid and he was trying to give me drawing lessons, because he was an art teacher, I didn't like the style. I was so tight, like I think a lot of young people are. They just want to get everything perfect. And he realised, okay, you're a perfectionist. There's not much I can do about that. So he actually was willing to help me by suggesting counting things. And from that day on, I realised I am a counter. I love counting.
Tell me then about the journey from counting the number of bricks on your house to the point where you're at Kew Gardens, world-renowned Kew Gardens, for decades, drawing a life-size water lily leaves.
I guess I looked up to my dad, who was an artist and an art teacher. I was good at art as a child, and I loved nature. My childhood was spent outdoors in the creek, catching tadpoles, looking at them, catching moths, looking at them, catching lizards, looking at them. And I always wanted to know, how I could combine the two, but it did take me quite a while. So I travelled around Australia a little bit and then eventually settled in North Queensland in the tropics, where you're surrounded by rainforest and reef and just incredible natural beauty. So when I decided, okay, I'm going to do an art degree, because everyone talks you out of doing an art degree. Don't do it. So I did other things, I got other jobs, and finally I said, just going to give in to this and do an art degree.
How long does it take to become proficient?
Good question. It takes a while. I'd say it takes a while. I've been doing it for about 30 years, 24 of those at Kew. The best way to be a botanical illustrator is to collaborate with botanists, because they love talking to you about their plant subjects. They're really, really passionate about them, and they make you passionate about them as well, especially if you click with a certain group of plants. So, for example, I started working with a palm botanist because I was living in tropical Queensland in Australia, and I loved going into the field with him because he could point out different species and say, this is how this palm is different from that one, and it made me start looking at them in a different light. And I could consult with him on the drawings. Is this right? Is that wrong? Am I getting it right? And that continued when I came to Kew. And it's like the mecca for botanical art and botany, because you're surrounded by world experts on so many of the plant families of the world. And they love nothing more than to sit down over a cup of tea and describe why the glandular hairs on this species are a little bit different from the glandular hairs on that species. We just nerd out, basically.
Now then, I suspect I know what these are, but I'm going to ask you to explain them to me anyway. So on the table, they look to be very, very impressive. Is that Leica?
Yeah, these are our beautiful microscopes, and they're stereo microscopes. They're Leica, so they're top quality. And they are mounted on these really heavy bases with a big swinging arm, which allows us to hover over whatever specimen we're drawing, whether it's a dried herbarium specimen or a wet spirit specimen or sometimes even fresh plant material from the gardens.
What kind of magnification then are they going up to?
They go up to about times 40, but there are some in the building that go even deeper. So if we need to go up another level, we'll go and sit at one of the botanists' desks as well. Can you see that mirror thing coming out of the side of the scope?
Oh yeah, I can. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just sticking out the side there. There's a mirror pointing downwards.
Yeah, that's my favourite tool. So that's a camera lucida, or
That is a great name,
Yeah.
but I haven't got a clue what it is.
it's also called I've forgotten. A drawing. It's also called a drawing tube, and it's really simple actually, and it harks back to tools that artists have used since the Renaissance. And what it does is it reflects an image of what's underneath it to the side of the microscope. In my case, that'll be my sketchbook or my paper. And at the same time, you see an image of what's under the microscope. So they overlap each other. It's almost like seeing a ghost.
So is that almost like allowing you to kind of trace what
Yes.
you're seeing?
Yes. You are tracing what you're seeing, but it's a bit more...
That makes it sound like it's really simple. Oh, we just trace it. There we go.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a real art to using it, and it takes a while to get used to it, but it enables you to draw what you're seeing quite quickly, and also you're capturing it at an exact magnification that you can view down the scope. So we do spend a lot of time staring down the microscope, drawing, but you get really lost in it. You just see a leaf. Like, if you're a botanical artist, you never just look at a leaf now and go, oh, there's a leaf. You'll zoom in and see all this incredible venation patterns, hairs, glands. It's like diving deeper and deeper and deeper into this beautiful world.
Oh, excuse me, Audrey. I just need to get in the shed. Sorry, the dog getting in the way there. Okay, so through the magic of editing, I'm just going to jump in here and say thanks. Thanks for letting me join you. And also, I'm jumping in because I need to prep the shed, our shed of greatness, because I need a picture hook here to hang a botanical illustration on after I've finished our chat with Lucy. If you're enjoying the show, please do hit the subscribe or follow button. Huge thank you to those of you who have rated the show and left a review. Dawn's Sewing Room, you're too kind. The excellently named Scary Fox 77, much appreciated. MRK * 121 also. I hope everyone's enjoying the quietness of this week's episode at Kew Gardens. It's quite a change from the usual loud noises you and I are hearing on our travels. But I am going to start hammering now, so let's go back to counting bricks with Lucy. Very early on, you were talking about how you went on a field trip. And obviously, when I think about botanical art, I think of, kind of perhaps historical kind of needs for it, kind of on Darwin or on Cook expeditions, and how important the botanical artist was on those kind of trips to help shape our view of nature. But now, without being rude...
I know what you're going to say. I know exactly what you're going to say.
Is there relevance today for botanical art?
Yeah, as so many people say, but we have photography now. We have photography now, and I know that. And I know that the artists who went on voyages of exploration and scientific expeditions in the past, their drawings and paintings were the only record that we had of plants as they looked in life. Obviously, specimens were then brought back and they could be drawn, as press specimens, but that was the only way we could record plants from life. So nowadays, our illustrations, which are done by hand and directly from the plant, sit alongside photography. They complement each other. However, there are still things that we can do that photography can't do, especially when it comes to drawing plant specimens that have been preserved in some way, because they don't look their best. When they've travelled halfway across the world, they've been squashed into a plant press, they've been dehydrated, they've been chopped up. We've got to bring them back to life. And this especially applies to things like flowers. So we can take a dried flower that's sitting in a little packet on a herbarium specimen that was collected 100 years ago. We can rehydrate it by gently boiling it, soaking it in water. We can pull it apart and we can make it look like new again to a degree. And we're not just drawing exactly what we see, we're drawing an informed interpretation of what we're seeing. There's also the tradition of painting plants from life in a way which captures the colour of something exactly as we see it, so that you can hold up the plant against the painting and there's none of the distortion of colour that you'll get, for example, in a photograph on screen or a printed photograph. So I think there's hope for us that we can survive, we can keep going. And I think above that whole question of accuracy, which is really what I'm talking about here, there's a simple process of showing people about plants, what's beautiful, important about them, through visual art. So it's a very specific kind of visual art.
I definitely think so. So I would suggest, and I'm making an assumption here, but I would suggest that people are making a connection to plants and falling in love with plants through art. It doesn't come through a photograph of a plant. I don't know how many people would have a photograph of a plant in their bathroom, but I think quite a few would have a beautiful art illustration of a plant which they see every day and connect with.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think that is so true. Photos have become so common in our everyday. We see them, we scroll through them on our screens every single day. And they're not a luxury anymore. They're everywhere. And there are so many beautiful, amazing photographs out there. But there's something different about viewing it through the lens of art. Definitely. I don't know, maybe it's the human element where that it's passed through somebody's mind, it's passed through somebody's hand, and it's real and it's tactile and it's physical.
Can we have a quick look at, so I think you said your colleague's called Ali.
Yeah.
Is just over there, and she's got some specimens and she's doing a little bit of work on that now. Yeah. Are you allowed to just tell me about what she's doing?
Yeah. Okay, Ellie. So Ellie is actually learning about botanical illustration at the moment. She's a botanist, but like many botanists, she's doing her own drawings.
What has drawn you to drawing? What has drawn you to botanical illustration?
My parents are both artists, so I grew up in a house with lots of art going on. And I found it very difficult to pick between art and science when I went to uni. So I did an art foundation course. And then I decided to do a zoology degree, and I'm still doing that degree, and I'm here for a year working in the herbarium, and this is just an opportunity that's come up, and I'm taking it.
I have to say, it's really lovely to be in this room, because here you're surrounded by professional botanical artists. So Christabel King, whose desks we're looking at now, she's been doing this for over 45 years. And I just can walk in one day and she's got a beautiful fresh plant specimen that she's painting for Curtis's Botanical magazine, and look over her shoulder and ask her questions. You know, what green are you using? Or, you know, it's just lovely to be in a place where everyone comes together and feeds off each other. So the materials are quite technical. We have our mechanical pencils. We also use these fancy proportional dividers, which have a sliding scale on them that allow you to enlarge while you're drawing or reduce.
It suggests to me that you're having to do quite a few calculations there.
Actually, the dividers allow you to bypass the calculations. That's what I love
Good
about
dividers.
them. Yeah, otherwise you have to measure and then multiply it in your head. So when I discovered the proportional dividers, it changed my life. And we've also got dissecting kit full of little forceps and scalpels and blades, because we have to dissect flowers, cut them open. Although when I was dissecting the giant Victoria water lily flowers, I was using a kitchen knife. It was a bit different.
Did you draw that life size?
I had to find one that would fit on the piece of paper and the board that I had available, which was a board measuring 1.2 by 1.2 metres. And I put the waders on, go into the pond with my measuring tape, when I found the perfect specimen, I could then say to them, can you cut that for me? I'm really lucky. That's one of the benefits of working with Kew. Hey, can I have a giant water lily leaf? Thanks.
Is that the one where you did an Instagram post and you said, yesterday, I quote, yesterday was a real wobble?
Oh, yeah. So I'm now working on the second one.
Right.
Some days you're really in the flow and your paintbrush, things are just pouring out. Other days it's like pulling teeth. You've got to just push through and push through.
So I find whenever I'm doing a project, I always find that I have this initial enthusiasm, and then there's this kind of what I call the valley of death, where I'm just like, this isn't working out at all, and you just have to plow through and come out the other end.
You really do. And even with something that looks quite straightforward and technical, there's still the art side of it. And the fact that every single painting you do is an experiment. You don't really know how it's going to go until you start. So you've just got to take that leap of faith and do it. And doing it the second time, I thought, oh yeah, this will be a lot easier. No, because this leaf has got its own challenges, its own problems. And it definitely affects your mood. You feel a bit indulgent explaining to somebody, oh, I'm sorry if I'm a bit snappy, but it's my leaf. My leaf's giving me a problem today. And then being really happy the next day. I figured out about why my leaf was bothering me, and it's the venation pattern on the edge. They give you a funny look.
And they go, oh, of course it is, Lucy, of course it is.
Yeah.
Is there any sense that actually there's a growing interest in botanical art?
I think there is a steady interest in botanical art. Plants are part of everybody's everyday life. They're the one part of nature that is always within view, even if you're living in a city. It might be a street tree, it might be a pot plant that you've got on your windowsill. Plants are so accessible and so part of our everyday. And if you look at the Young Botanical Artists exhibition, I helped judge the final round of that. I think they had over 1,000 entries from countries all over the world. And the scope, the range of artwork was amazing, and the talent was incredible as well. And it was really heartening to see all these young people. Some of the skill they've shown is just incredible.
When you say it's heartening, are you really looking at this thinking, God, how can you be doing that at your age?
I want them to do it at their age. I mean, I started in my 20s, which was quite rare. And I teach people in their 60s and 70s who say, I wish I'd discovered this years ago when my eyes were better. So no, I don't begrudge them an inch at their talent. I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
What's next for you?
What's next for me? I need to finish my Victoria Water Lily project. I have started going a little bit back to my fine art roots, actually, and through working a bit more in my sketchbook, I'm actually enjoying sitting down and doing some loose sketches in pen and ink now.
Loose sketches?
I know.
Lucy.
Shock horror. Yeah, maybe I'm starting to relax a bit. I've had enough of being obsessive for a while. Maybe it's all about balance for me next.
Lucy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me. It's much appreciated.
Thank you for talking. I really enjoyed it.
Well, you're probably as surprised as I am that the shed is still standing and we have a hook up. Okay, number 9 on our list of the greatest products we make in Britain, the Botanical Illustration. We've been creating them for centuries and the skills have been carried on thanks to people like Lucy. My thanks to her and to Kew Gardens for letting me in despite the fact that I looked like a drowned rat. Lucy's got a book launch next week actually for her botanical sketchbook. She invited me along. I am gutted I can't go. I'm recording in Yorkshire, but I know she'll be listening, so let's all wish her the very best of luck for her launch. Thanks for all your messages on Instagram. Search The Factory Next Door. Church Mouse Creations, that's a great idea. Tyler Miller, I'll drop on by sometime. Selena Rose Studio, Bailey Bag UK, Anna B, thank you so much. I hope you'll let me join you again soon for another half an hour. Until then, stay happy.